All right. So we now we are live. Things have changed a little bit since you went to school here, I would say.
Yeah.
But we are recording. We are recording for Shirley Simmons Middle School. Miss Tammy Sharp at Shirley Simmons is going to show this to her class, as well as Jatoria Kirksey and Angela Reed over at Old Town Middle School, and
Okay.
my friend Vicky Parks at Germantown High School, and my buddy Greg Morgan over at Madison Middle School. So we have some here with us live, but this will be seen by a lot of our young people in Madison County schools.
Awesome.
So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
All right. I am. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Toni Nettles Thompson, and today I'll be chatting with you all briefly about my public health career. Thanks so much to my good friend, Mr. P, for inviting me today, and I hope to share something with you that inspires you. So let's get into it, shall we? Just as this slide says, it was truly all a dream. I grew up in Camden, Mississippi, right there in a square, I call it, at the intersection of Loring Road and McCullough Road. And if you guys don't know what McCullough Road is, that's the road that runs behind your auditorium. So my grandparents lived there. My mom lived on Loring Road. And so I spent the bulk of my childhood there, right there in Camden. I attended Velma Jackson. I walked those same halls that you all have walked. And so it's truly an honor to come back today to speak. While at Velma Jackson, I was very active in my school and in my community. One of the first things I can ever remember saying that I wanted to be when I grew up was an OBGYN, right? I wanted to be a baby doctor, catch babies. And so I geared my high school career towards accomplishing that goal. And so I was a student athlete. I was privileged to be a cheerleader and serve as captain in 03 and 04. I played softball barely. I was very active in several groups and organizations like the Beta Club and some of those other things. And so during my summers, I participated in summer science academies to help with the AP science and math courses that were very heavy for me then. And I graduated in 2005 as a salutatorian, and I received a full academic scholarship and a partial sports scholarship to Alcorn State University, where I also was a cheerleader and a captain from 06 and 07. And I graduated from there in 2009 with honors. And so the somewhere between bullets 5 and the last one, I ended up not wanting to be an OBGYN. I was exposed to some other careers. And so I set my sights on becoming the first African-American female orthodontist in the state of Mississippi. If you're familiar with Dr. Chandra Minor, you know that she has taken that title, and I am so proud of her. She's an Alcornite as well. But yeah, and so I majored in biology pre-dentistry. I graduated in 2009. I got to do some amazing things at Alcorn, where I ended up pledging Zeta Phi Beta sorority. I was involved in pageants and student life, and just really made the most of my time there at Alcorn. But by the time it was my senior year, I was faced with a dilemma. And I always have referred to it as the two roads diverge, like the Robert Frost poem. And so in my senior year, I started to want to get ready for dental school. And so I started doing some job shadowing and working with some of the dentists and orthodontists in the area, near the Vicksburg area. And so I very, very quickly realized that I did not like teeth. I did not like breath, and I did not like salon. And so my dental career came to a screeching halt. And I was then faced with, so what now? And so I was exposed to public health via a health fair that I attended in Jackson, at Jackson State University. And I decided to take that road less traveled, and it has made all the difference. So I enrolled at the Jackson State University School of Public Health in 2009. I graduated with my Master's of Public Health in 2011 with a concentration in health behavioral and health promotion, and a minor in epidemiology.
Oh, wow.
And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But during that time there, I was privileged to intern with the National Institutes of Health in Washington, D.C. for a year. And that experience really, really solidified my choice in public health. And so you all may be wondering, what in the world is public health? I'm here to tell you that you see public health in everyday life. The textbook definition states that it's the science and art of preventing disease, prolonging life, and promoting health. But you see public health in the form of receiving your vaccinations when it's time to go to school when you were a little kid, educating the public about healthier choices, right? So promoting like physical activity and nutrition so that you don't become obese, or so that you don't have chronic diseases like hypertension and diabetes. It's preventing disease outbreaks and injury. We see that right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so public health has a very, very big role in protecting the health of the public from those disease outbreaks. We also work in emergency preparedness for natural disasters, as we have seen with Hurricane Ida. And so you have a lot of boots on the ground public health practitioners who are helping with that effort. And public health is such a broad career, and there are endless opportunities in public health. And one thing that makes it unique for me is that it includes all of STEM. So when you talk about the science, you're looking at the diseases, how they are spread, how do we stop diseases from being spread. You look at the technology. Public health informatics includes the technological advances that we see in public health or in health in general. In engineering, we see public health practitioners look at our communities and our roads to make sure that they are walkable and bikeable so that we can promote physical activity outside, right? And then in math, that's where you have your epidemiologists and your biostatisticians that look at things like, today we had X number of COVID-19 new reported cases, or these are the number of vaccines that we need to administer to reach herd immunity so that we can protect everybody from COVID-19. Or even something as simple as like vital statistics, where you get your number of births and deaths for the year. And so as you can see from this word cloud here, public health is a really, really broad career field, and it has very endless possibilities. And I also found that, and that I didn't know in the beginning when I first started in public health, is that it can be combined with other degrees. So if your goal is to be a registered nurse, you can be an RN with an MPH, which is a Master of Public Health, and you can do nurse educating for diabetes or cardiovascular disease. Or if you, like me, wanted to be a dentist, you can get your doctorate of dental medicine along with a master's in public health, and you can do oral health research. Again, if you want to be a doctor, just an MD physician, you combine that with public health, and you can do some research around community health and population health. So the sky is truly the limit. Opportunities are endless in public health. And so this slide I like to call reaching the goal. I have been very, very fortunate in my career to have experienced public health on all levels, including the local level, like your local health department where you go to get your immunizations, the state health department that oversees the local health departments, and then on the federal level with NIH, and more recently with the CDC, which is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I am a contractor with CDC now, and I work in the Center for State, Tribal, Local, and Territorial Support. And what we do is administer grants. If you're not familiar with what a grant is, I work in grant management on a team. We work with COVID-19, maternal and child health, and other public health initiatives. And so essentially what we do is the President of the United States issues his budget every year. And he says X amount of dollars will be allocated to public health. And so those monies usually go to organizations like CDC and NIH to get people and organizations to fund their research or fund their public health activities that enhance the lives of the public. And so, we'll say we received, just throwing numbers out, we received $1 billion and we want to award 150 organizations to do work around COVID-19 or childhood immunization or cardiovascular disease. And so you'll have organizations like American Heart Association or the Arthritis Foundation, or even if we're in Camden and say Velma Jackson had this health initiative that they wanted to do, and they say, hey, I'd like to apply for this funding. And so the funding is issued on our website. Velma Jackson would then fill out a proposal and an application which says, this is my my work plan, and these are the activities that I would like to do. This is the timeline for these activities. These are the goals I would like to accomplish, and this is the money that I would need to do that. They would send that to my office. I would assemble a team to look at all of the applications that we receive, and then we would make decisions on the best applications who will receive the money. And we put together a funding package and send it to them, and then they will be contracted through us to perform this work for X amount of years. And so I've been fortunate to work on both sides of this, because prior to my role at the CDC, I worked for the DeKalb County Board of Health, which is a local health department. And we received a grant from CDC called the REACH grant, which looks at health disparities in the African American community. And so they gave me money to implement activities around physical activity, nutrition, and breastfeeding. And so that's the scope of what I do in public health. Again, from there, working with the CDC, the sky is the limit. There's always room for improvement. There's room for growth. The leadership there encourages growth, and it's really a great career field with excellent benefits. All right, and lastly, I am a lifetime student. I am currently in my second year of my doctoral program, where I am looking to complete my doctorate of public health, guys, by 2024. And so with that degree, that also opens a whole new realm of opportunities for me in public health. I am a certified lactation counselor, which is a person who teaches mothers and families how to breastfeed, which I, was exposed to that. I never knew that person existed until I started my career in public health. And it kind of brought me back full circle to my idea of wanting to be an OBGYN, but maybe not with the medical degree that comes with it. And so right now I'm training to be a full spectrum doula, which is a person that assists the OBGYN or the midwife when they are delivering babies, and they offer childbirth education and education to the family when they are in the hospital or wherever they choose to deliver, and when they bring their babies home. Right? Yeah, and it won't go. There we go. So are there any questions about public health, school, career paths, anything
Yeah,
like that?
I have a few from them, but I have a couple.
Okay.
You talked about this the STEM process in public health. One thing that and I know I can speak for the other teachers that'll see this later. One thing that we really push is the design process through engineering, and that you're not going to get it right the first time. So how much trial and error is involved in this career field and in this spectrum, because the problem, that not a problem, but the issue that we see is that these kids are going through, they don't get it right the first time, they want to quit. But that is, how often do people in STEM careers get it right the first time?
Almost never. It is very, very rare that you get something right on the first time. But that's the beauty of the scientific method, right? We, hypothesize, we form our observations, we do our experiment, and then if it works, it works. Yay, we move on. But if it doesn't, the beauty of it is that we get to try again. And that's the thing about science. It's ever evolving. Science in 2021 is not really the science that was in 2005 when I was at Velma Jackson, right? And so it's ever evolving. It's building on those things from 2005 and moving forward. And so that's where it comes in, that you have to be flexible. You have to be okay with failing. Just personally, when I realized that, dentistry wasn't going to be for me, that was devastating for me, because all I could ever think of was becoming this, first African American female orthodontist in the state. And I was going to make smiles beautiful, and it was going to be very rewarding. But that didn't happen for me. And so I had to adjust, pick myself up, and take that other road.
Yeah, and that's what I keep trying to say, whenever we're doing these engineering projects, because we had a civil engineer 2 weeks ago, and she said the same thing about the amount of trial and error that goes on in the STEM career is exponential. It's not something not something you're going to get right the first time. And something else you talked about the importance of the prenatal care in the African American community. How important is that? Because I know that's been a hot topic on the news as well. How important is it for people to get into that field? Because honestly, it was at a pandemic level with far as mortality rates in the African American community.
Definitely. And that's why maternal and child health is a huge passion of mine. And so in public health, we say that the health of the community is only as good as the health of its mothers and babies, right? Because the mothers and babies are what's going to populate our community and keep us growing and moving forward. And so there's a lot of research going on right now in public health around infant mortality, which is, babies dying within their first year of life, and maternal mortality, which is mothers dying either during childbirth or within that first year after childbirth. And in the Black community, African American community, is so crucial, because our mothers and babies are dying at a rate of about 4 times, for more maternal mortality, about 4 times as much, or 4 times more than their other counterparts. That's all other women of other ethnicities and races delivering babies. And so it's very crucial for people like me and like you all to get into this work, so that we can provide what we call culturally competent care. Whereas, just an example, some medical school textbooks teach that African American people have a higher pain tolerance than other people. And so a lot of times in the hospitals, our cries for medicine and therapies to prevent pain are unheard because, you know, it's been ingrained in the medical institution that we don't need pain medicine. And so that's some of those things are important at eliminating those biases, what we call racial biases, implicit biases in the healthcare field. And the only way we can do that is to get people who look like us to go into healthcare, to go into public health, and to choose these career paths.
Yeah, and before I get to some of their questions, I have one more about this, and it's similar. One thing, well, you know, I have professionals from all over the country, and a lot of these fields, they're in demand right now. They have a trend, they have a business trend, they get into it. But these careers you're talking about, they're always going to be in demand because, you know, and me and you have talked before, my aunt worked for the CDC in the 60s and 70s when smallpox was the big deal. And now with COVID-19 and all these other things, these jobs are not going to go away. So if somebody wants to be in a career that is going to be steady and always going to be in demand and always with evolving technology, how important is it for them to get involved in stuff like this?
Yes, public health is going to be around. It has been around since the beginning of time. You know, and it has evolved. It started with cholera outbreaks at the wells, and you know, and there came your scientific method and all of those things. So it's always going to be around. It's always going to be evolved as we see advances in technology and informatics, especially that's a subset of public health is public health informatics, where they deal with nothing but technology, whether it's maintaining electronic health records so that we can make sure that our patients are adhering to their medications or their therapies, whether it's even things as simple as in electronic health records where they actually, are you allergic to anything? And then before they give you something in the hospital or a clinic that you're allergic to, informatics is that subset of public health that engineers that platform and that electronic health record where you can input that and they don't have to call, you know, a million people to find out what you're allergic to. They can just see it in your health records, whether it came from Baptist or UMC or, you know, Merit Health. They can see that and not kill you in the hospital by giving you something you're allergic to. So that's an example of informatics. When you start to think about engineering, like I said, making sure our neighborhoods are walkable and bikeable, that's you know, that's urban engineering, making sure that you have walking and bike paths, making sure that the stop signs are there and visible, making sure you have a traffic light. You know, I know in Camden we only have one traffic light right there at the town center by the library, but you know, just making sure that that's there, making sure that people want to get out and exercise, if they have a safe place to do that, you know, and that's especially important in rural communities like Camden.
Yeah, and I'm glad you hit on that because the IT and software jobs are going to be just as much in demand as the biological jobs in this area.
Yes.
So if somebody is a computer person, there's definitely a place for them in this area. Okay, there's no name on this one. All right, this is from J. Ashton Williams, and he is a ninth grader. And he is asked, and you talked a little bit about your educational background, but if somebody wanted to get to work in public health, what type of education would they need?
Okay, so you're going to get your high school diploma first, right? We're going to graduate. And then we're going to do, so there's a couple of different ways you can go. I wasn't aware that there was a bachelor's of science in public health at the time that I started school. And again, I wouldn't have been aware because my sights are set on dentistry, right? And so you can either do a bachelor's of science in public health at a 4-year university, or you can do pretty much any 4-year degree that you would want. Again, like I said, you can combine those degrees. So I know people who have done a bachelor's in social work. My bachelor's was in biology, so it was still in science. So any degree in STEM for your first 4 years, or public health for your first 4 years. And then when you want to open up more career opportunities, you go and you do your master's in public health for 2 years, about 2.5 years. And then from there, you're able to get an entry-level job in public health. And then you'd want to start, well, depending on, where you go, you might want to do some certifications, right? So like I did the CLC certification because I'm interested in human breastfeeding and lactation support. So I did that CLC. I'm also interested in, the childbirth side of it. So I did a childbirth education and a doula certification. And so when you get that, and then there's also a certification called a Certified Health Education Specialist, where you teach health education and promotion, and you can use that as a degree field. There's so many different things that you can do, but it really starts with that 4-year degree, and then the optional MPH if you don't do a bachelor's of public health.
Okay. That's good. This is from Camaria Smith. She's a 9th grader, also one of our basketball players here with the Lady Falcons.
Okay.
And we also talked about this, about how a lot of people view the CDC and public health people as just a bunch of old white men. And she's asking about, are you the only Black female that works in your area?
I actually am not. And believe it or not, 90% of my team is Black women.
Awesome.
My branch deputy is a phenomenal Black woman. Our branch chief is a Black woman. We are seeing so much more diversity in public health, and especially now with CDC, as more women are being promoted to leadership positions. Whereas, maybe when your aunt was there in the 60s and 70s, we were secretaries, and
yeah, she was one of the,
and not saying that work is not
scientists. She was one of the only female scientists there for the 90s. And she did great, but she said it was overwhelming sometimes, and even though, she's a white woman, but she said she was one of the only females there, and everybody looked at her different.
Right. But we're seeing, as the field continues to grow, we're seeing much more diversity in public health. And even now, our CDC official is Dr. Relinsky, and she's a woman. So we're seeing a lot more women breaking the glass ceiling, as they call it, and especially a lot more African-American women being promoted to leadership positions.
That's awesome. This is from Amaya Dixon. She's also a 9th grader. And she's asking about, once you decided you weren't going to go into orthodontics, what encouraged you to get into public health?
Good, very good question. So I attended this health fair at Jackson State at the Medical Mall, if you guys know where that is, downtown Jackson. And I met a professor. Her name is Dr. Jerry Cannon Smith. She is one of my mentors to this day. And she recruited me for a program that she was doing called Preconception Peer Educators. And we did a week-long training out at, what is the camp out in Camden? I can't remember. Duncan Gray?
The Gray Center on 51.
The Gray Center.
And Bratton Green.
We did a week-long training out there, and there we learned to promote responsible sexual activity and responsible preconception, which means taking care of your whole body before you start to have babies, right? And so that really sparked my interest in public health. And I kind of just got under her wing, and she just pushed me on, ahead. And I had the opportunity to work with her several times during my time at Jackson State. And another project I worked on was a childhood obesity project with the American Academy of Pediatrics. So there I was working with pediatricians and primary care doctors who were interested in combating childhood obesity and making sure that children are healthy. And then, right there, you're dealing with the science side, right? So you're dealing with the medical doctors who are looking at this. And you're also dealing with the epidemiologists and biostatisticians who are looking at this data of, just using Velma Jackson or Madison County Schools as an example. We'll look at the children at Camden Elementary and we'll follow them from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade or all the way through college to see if they were obese when they were in kindergarten. Will they be obese as adults? So, like I said, public health has so many different avenues, and it's so interconnected that it really goes hand in hand with the science community and with the healthcare community.
Oh yeah, I never. I mean, that's 12 years of research. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
This is from Alonzo Johnson. He's also a ninth grader, and he's asking, if you weren't with the CDC, what could you do as far as public health?
Oh, so you can, like I said, I've had several jobs. So my very first job in public health was inspecting hotels, right?
Oh,
So yeah, if you guys seen the movie Deliver Us from Eva, and she was a food inspector, and she'd go in and she, inspect the temperature of the water, or she expect to see what's clean, or if, the temperature of the refrigerator is up to par. That is public health. Restaurants, hotels, I would go in and make sure that, they were cleaned properly, making sure that if they had a kitchen, some of those food safety things were up to par. Even as far as checking the swimming pools when they get ready to open for the summer, to make sure they have the right amount of chlorine, so that it can kill germs in the water, and then from inspecting hotels, I went into children's mental health, where I worked with the state of Mississippi, and did some things around engagement for youth. And then from there, I worked with the Arthritis Foundation, where I looked at childhood arthritis, to where I did advocacy in Washington, D.C., to make sure that the things that we wanted as the Arthritis Foundation were in some of the bills and the legislation that was passed on the Hill. And then from there, I went to the state of Alabama, where I worked in cardiovascular disease and diabetes, making sure that people knew the signs to look for if someone was having a stroke, making sure that people knew how to identify hidden salt in their foods. Like, that's all public health. We even took a group of people grocery shopping and teach them, and we were looking at teaching them how to read food labels so they can know, how much sodium, how much sugar is in their foods, portion sizes, things like that. So that's all public health.
yeah, and it's never going to go away. This is from Nia Love. She just moved here from Chicago, so she's one of our new students. But this is a great question. It says, out of your whole career, what has been the most exciting part?
Ooh, I think my time in Washington, D.C., with the National Institutes of Health was the most exciting. I applied for this internship, and I was accepted. And so I spent a summer working with NIH as a junior investigator, working with data from the Jackson Heart Study in Jackson, Mississippi.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so I worked very closely with a lot of scientists there. I lived in Washington, D.C., and so I was able to, take in some of the sites. I was able to visit Howard University, which was the birthplace of Zeta Phi Beta, and a ton of other sororities and fraternities. It was, my first real time out of Mississippi and experiencing a big city on my own. And it was very exciting. It was very challenging. I had to take the metro and the bus to get to work every day. And if you didn't get that timing just right, you had to wait for another bus to come, and it might not come for an hour. So now you're an hour and a half late for work.
Yeah, that system in DC is quite intimidating.
It's very, very, very intimidating, but it was so challenging and very rewarding, and all of the work that I did there, which I did a capstone project at the end of that summer, and then my internship was extended for a year. And so I was able to do some work around using the faith community, right? Like our churches and synagogues and those things, and public health. So I would go into churches and I would teach them about cardiovascular disease, some of that SALT stuff, knowing your numbers for stroke, how to take your blood pressure at home, a lot of those things. And we would incorporate it into their faith, in their happenings inside their church or their synagogue.
I would have thought about that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just got a couple more. I know we thank you so much for joining us, but I do want to have a little bit of input from you about your HBCU experience, because you did go to Alcorn State and Jackson State, and we have a lot of all minorities watching this with us now. We're going to have a lot watching later, but even for some of the non-minority students that'll see this, what can Alcorn and Jackson State offer that can really help in an educational experience?
I think that a common misconception is that degrees from schools that are not HBCUs, like your Mississippi State or your Ole Miss, Southern Miss, that those degrees carry more weight than, a degree from Alcorn or Jackson State, or Rust College, also in Mississippi. And that's simply not true. Your degree is the same degree from any school that you choose. A lot of people think that, because HBCUs are so family oriented, when you go there, you will meet your lifetime friends and family. The teachers, the class sizes are small, so your teachers know you by name and they know when you're not in class, and they will get you for it when they see you. But it all works out for the best. But some of my superiors went to schools like Howard and Hampton and even Spelman and Morehouse here in Atlanta. And they're leaders. They're leaders in their fields. They're leaders in public health. HBCUs generate a huge number of African American leaders across all fields, not just public health. You get your top doctors from Meharry Medical School, which is an HBCU.
Right, Nashville, yeah.
Right there in Nashville. You get your top lawyers from Howard. You get your top, anything that you can think of, they likely came from an HBCU. And so when you go to an HBCU, like I said, you get that one-on-one time with the instructors. You get people who are very invested in your education because you are a product of them when you leave that campus. Again, Alcorn Jackson State is very close-knit, so everybody knows everybody. It was a really good time. If you've ever been to Alcorn, it's in the middle of nowhere, and so it really taught us how to survive, not being at home with our parents.
If you can make it at Velma Jackson, you can make it at Alcorn.
Yes. Yes. If you can make it at Alcorn, you can, and Velma Jackson, you can make it anywhere. It really teaches you how to grow up, to be accountable, And you get a lot of life lessons from some of those seasoned professors and employees.
Yeah,
And they're really invested in making sure that you excel.
and I'm not as familiar with the programs at Alcorn, but I do know at Jackson State right now in their STEM programs, number one, they have two of the top professors in the country with Dr. Jennifer Murphy and Dr. Wilbur Walters, whose daughter actually goes to Madison Central. And then I know for a fact that graduate program at Jackson State is very, very diverse.
Yes.
The HBCUs tend to be more affordable. So people looking for a graduate degree, Jackson State right here in Jackson has a lot to offer, even for non-minorities. So it is a viable option for any of our students that might be looking for something like that.
Yes, yes. And Jackson State has the first and only school of public health in the state. So that's a really big thing to get a public health degree from Jackson State University.
Yeah, and just for anybody watching this later, that public health school at Jackson State is very, very diverse. They may be an HBCU, but they are taking students of all walks of life and putting them out in great careers right now. Now, before we go, I do want to. I always ask people this, especially Velma Jackson alumni. As somebody like everybody else in this room, and like a lot of the people that are going to watch this later, you grew up Black in Camden, in Mississippi, but yet you've gone to Washington, D.C., Birmingham, Atlanta. You've been all over the country and done some amazing things. You grew up with the exact same amount of pressure, the exact same amount of lack of resources as everybody else here. What have you done to become so successful?
I stayed the course. It has not always been easy. It has not always been comfortable. But when you realize a goal, and even though your goal may change, like I said, I grew up wanting to be an OBGYN and switched to dentistry. Now it's public health, and it's coming right back around to childbirth, which is basically what OBGYNs do. They deliver babies. You always start with a goal, and you always keep that goal in mind at every step of the way. It takes a lot of prayer. It takes a lot of concentration. It takes a lot of perseverance. But I'm here to tell you, if I can do it, you can do it too. Like I said, I walk those very same halls that you guys walk at Velma Jackson. Madison County, just to include the whole school. I was in Velma Jackson when that Camden campus was K through 12. So
Not that old, no.
Oh yeah, it was K through 12. I was at, I think where the ROTC building is, that used to be the elementary.
Yep.
And then that shop building was middle school, and then the other end was high school. And my mom, when I was in elementary, my mom taught at the shop building. She taught Japanese or something. And just remember that you do not have to be a product of your environment. You can change. Your environment can change. And, I never would have thought that I would be exposed to some of the things, but it took teachers investing in me, like Mr. P is investing in all of you guys, to get some people in there to show you that there is something different. I had a teacher who gave me, I was 9th or 10th grade. I can't remember, maybe 11th grade. Maybe 10th grade, because I went when I was in 11th. Gave me a pamphlet about presidential classroom. Had never heard of it. Filled it out. They gave me a scholarship to come to Washington, D.C. for a week to learn about politics. And I did that while a student at Velma Jackson High School.
Wow.
And it was amazing, first time, like really, really away from home. Cell phones were barely out then. That was, you have to call after 9 to get the free minutes.
They don't know anything about that.
They don't know anything about that. You could text, but they charge you per text.
Yep.
So imagine my parents, because I have always been a texter. So imagine that phone bill and that conversation. But I went to Washington, D.C. for a week. And I think that was the beginning of my mind saying, hey, it's more out here than Camden. It's more out here than Mississippi, and now it's more out here than the United States, because, working at the CDC, I can do deployments where I can go and work overseas. very easily. And I also want to add that during that week in Washington, D.C., I didn't know it then, but I met my husband.
Oh,
Go figure. So,
you got the balls on the room on that.
Yeah. So I mean, your possibilities are endless. Never let anyone confine you to an area. You can go wherever you want to go. You can be whatever you want to be. Um, you just have to keep that determination.
That's awesome. And I think I speak for everybody at Velma Jackson when we say you're one of our most proud alums. And I know we have a lot, but here in with the Falcons, we're extremely happy to call you a fellow Falcon, and you're a perfect example of what can really be done, no matter where you come from, and it's truly inspiring.
Thank you.
Well, again, we thank you so, and I know you're really busy. We thank you so much for doing this for us. That was some great stuff, and like I said, you got a room full of applause when you said you met your husband in Washington D.C. So.
Yeah, I did. I met him. We didn't know it then, and we didn't connect. I mean, we've only been married for 2 years, so we didn't connect until, connect again till years later. But yeah, I met my husband in Washington D.C. at 16 years old.
Wow. Well, that's the way it goes. Well, and we both come a long way, but it's truly inspiring. And I will definitely talk to you soon.
Okay, thank
you. And we're allowed to
you.
have people again on campus need to come see us. Whenever COVID will finally end, we'd love to have you on campus.
I'm hoping to come for homecoming.
We'll talk about that because we're having and actually I can go ahead and put this out. We're having a food drive for the Camden community is having a food drive for senior night for homecoming, and we're going to run our promo for that, so you can get some people involved in that. It's going to be called Falcons Feed the Need. We're going to partner with Scott Central High School on senior night, October 29th, and we're going to have our promo running at homecoming.
Awesome.
And our grand marshal for homecoming is another Alcorn night, Melissa Faith Payne.
Oh yeah, I know Melissa. Yeah,
so it's gonna be a great time. We'd love to have you.
Awesome. I'm hoping to come, so fingers crossed. Hope to see you guys soon.
Hopefully we'll get to have that parade and everything. Well, we'll see you soon, Toni. We appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.